obviously a rich space for exploring all kinds of things. It's not just one thing. But I wondered at what point you realized that it was the genre that was the best fit for this film and the story you wanted to tell, and if there were other films in this arena that inspired you to think, I can take my story and put it into this kind of container.
I knew almost from the outset that the way that I wanted to picture the story and realize the film was through the lens of horror and as a horror experience. And, like you said, it's such a rich space and it's so evocative. And I was also interested in this interplay of, our characters' daytime lives, which are their ostensibly non-horror lives, and then some of their nighttime lives, like things that go bump in the night and all of that. And this question of which is more horrifying and which horror is feeding the other and what is creating this experience for them. So I knew very, very early on that that's the way that I wanted to do it. And I was also just really excited about that because for me it's fun and it's just, it's a really powerful space that I think draws upon the subconscious a lot. And I think that, a horror space allows you to really dig in creatively and, represent not necessarily literally but emotionally in ways that can be very, very truthful. And I had, certain horror films on my mind that I had, seen or rewatched or that were just like kind of like recurring to me or that I felt like shared some sort of thematic similarity. But there's actually also a couple of non-horror films that I was
Hmm.
also thinking about. One would be The White Ribbon, which is like,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
horror film, but not a horror film, also being so much about a space and about a community and a shared experience and the way that they are creating meaning together. And anyway, that was like, it was really interesting for me to watch at the time that I was, thinking about Master. And then another Michael Haneke film as well that I was thinking about was Cachet, which is, I think, another non-horror horror. It's a horror film, but there's no ghosts, there's not really a killer, but there's a mystery, and there are life and death stakes that feel horrific. So those were some that I was thinking about, and then I also thought about classic horror films or classic. I'm thinking back to like 70s horror. Don't Look Now was another film that played on my mind. And Rosemary's Baby was one that Charlotte, who's the DP, and I talked about a lot. So I mean, there were a lot, and it's just like, oh yeah, research. I just like watch a bunch of horror films, and I'm like, ah, yes, like I've learned. It was good.
So when it came time to cast both Regina and Zoe, I know, Mariama, this is partially inspired by your own experiences at college. When you met with your stars, what sort of experiences did you share with each other where they could say, or I mean, Regina, what did you say? Like, oh, I remember something like this where I felt like this. I can feel this. What sort of experiences did you share? I guess is the general question.
I remember you, Regina, talking about your aunt or like your aunt, your like family friend aunt who works in academia. In our first conversation, we talked about, these sort of
That
elitist institutions, and she had written a book about it, I
I read
think,
the book,
or
and yeah, and I was talking to you about her experience going up for tenure. She was actually going. I was actually there, so yeah, her experience definitely. We had a. I remember that, but yeah, I remember that, and I actually talked to her about the script. It was really incredible to read a script that really touched upon some experiences that I had at the school I went to, and that as a student, and that she had as a professor, and she was profoundly impactful to me, working through a lot of things at that school that I experienced. It's so crazy. I like that was so prominent in my thought process, and it's almost like I had forgotten that piece. I remember all those experiences like right now. I remembered them shooting. I must have blocked them out again. Imagine blocking out something 3 or 4 times. But then but now it's just come back to remember, like an emotional memory, I should say.
I mean, academia is such a fraught area for women in general, and then you add in anyone who's not white. I can't imagine what her experiences were like. It's incredible she was able to share that with you.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I didn't even know she had experienced them at all. That's what was so amazing. I think I was having a really particularly challenging time at the school. And, she pulled me into her office and was like, kind of like Gail, my experiences were not nearly as bad as Jasmine's, of course, but she gave me that, like, you can do this. You're not going to stop. You're not going to. And it's kind of, it was very, very meaningful. And I think that's what helped forge our relationship for years. Now, I mean, now, currently, still.
Zoe, what did you and Mariama talk about? What, of your own experiences did you bring to the role?
Mariama and I would meet up in the mornings on Zoom. These moments with Mariama are so special to me because we were really building Jasmine at that point. We were building, where she came from, why she came to Ancaster, why is she here? A lot of the experiences Jasmine had, I was familiar with, but I don't know if I ever processed topics about touching hair, things about skin complexion, different things that I don't know if I ever really sat with myself and talked about. So Mariama and I having our meetings in the morning and able to like dissect it. How did it make you feel? What was, just asking questions about these things that are genuinely really painful, and if they isolate you in situations where you just want to blend in or just want to just keep going about your day. So we talked about situations like that, but it was interesting digging up feelings of isolation, of odd one out, and in a world where Jasmine really just wants to, be a part of the crowd. It felt like it was hard for her and I to just feel normal.
Regina, whenever I see a performer is also producing a project, it always makes me think there's a whole other level of commitment and interest in the project. Why did you want to produce this film?
I loved the film. I mean, I loved the I can't say I love the film, obviously, because there was no film, but I loved the script. I loved the filmmaker, and I thought that if you get a combination like that and you get to, have someone like Mariama who has so much integrity and also wants to know and hear your voice, that's also incredible in any way that anything I do can lend itself in any way. It's always exciting for me. But I think to be in a relationship that has such reciprocity, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of, with another woman, you know what I mean? It's so exciting. And a Black woman, I mean, there were so many things that made, like being a full part of the process and the project really, really even more meaningful. And every part
So,
is meaningful. I should just say that. There's a whole team that makes a film possible. And like there's like not one there's not one part of it that's not equally as like important. You know what I mean? And we never talk about a lot, but like our crew and like just our entire cast. It's like a whole unit that makes it come alive.
Yeah, we were really lucky to have like an incredible cast ensemble. I was actually thinking this was a question that came up earlier in the day, and only after I thought, oh, I have the opposite kind of answer. And they were asking you, Zoe, about whether any of your scene partners essentially helped you get, to this isolated space for Jasmine. I was thinking, well, on the flip side, as soon as we would call cut, you and Noah and Talia and Ella, who, play her like not great friends, we're all great friends, and like the family that we were able to make also with our crew is incredible. And Regina coming on and wanting to be in a producing, capacity, it just really felt like, oh, like we're really all in this together. And, Regina is embracing this film. And it's like, so it was a big hug. We were really lucky in that way.
Well, I know you guys had sort of a fraught production in terms of you were going and then you had to stop because of the pandemic. And I wondered if you could, sort of talk me through that process and what you might have learned about filmmaking and, how it has to move and change all the time and how you managed to keep this creative spirit going when you had to take this giant break in between things.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll tell you, I'm grizzled as hell. Like, I'm like, it put some hair on my chest. And when I went back, truly, there are a lot of things, and it sounds almost like the sort of, fictions that you tell yourself to like make yourself feel okay. But like, I truly genuinely believe that there are like a number of huge upsides and like benefits and advantages of having this interrupted shoot. When I went back for the second half of our shoot, I wasn't the same person that I was when we first started. I wasn't the same director. There was so much that I had learned. And even in the moment, it's like film shoots, like everything's happening so fast. And, it's like the clock is ticking down. And in our first go round, there were a couple of times where I would make, an observation like, oh, all right, like this, but I couldn't ever fully connect. Like, here's how I respond to it. Or I'm like, okay, this took longer, but I couldn't quite. So when I had all the time in the world to sit and think about the process and think about the scenes that we had left to do and, how we were going to make it work, I would have never been able to get to a certain level of depth and complexity, I hope, in the picturing of the scene, if we had done it all in one shot, because I just didn't, everything was moving at such a frantic speed like it always does. So that was positive. I felt relentlessly optimistic anyway, because, we had no idea our innocent selves, it was 2 weeks to plan the curve. I thought that it was like around the corner. We were March, 10th. And I was kind of looking at the calendar thinking like, can we outpace this? We just need 3 more weeks to go. Is it gonna, escalate that rapidly? And it did, but I didn't know. I didn't know that it would be a year. And I just really believed in the film and all the actors and all the cast and crew. We were talking to each other. Zoe, Regina, and some of the actors and I were in a movie club. We were watching movies every week, having Zoom calls and discussing. I never believed that we wouldn't finish it. So I just, I was just kind of every day going with whatever crazy new information was being thrown at me.
Well, so for Zoe and Regina, how do you, I guess you can't stay in the character headspace for all that time, but what was your process to be able to say, I can return to this whenever we can return to production, and I will continue to feel and give the performance I was giving before? Like, how do you just keep that in you?
I don't know. Somehow you just know you have to. I think you do so much history and study, and then you're back in that world, and that you're not your same physical self per se, and you start before you're with your director. I don't know. You kind of get back into the groove of who that person is.
It was such a jagged, ripping out of what we were so committed to.
Yeah.
And I think that when that happens, on the flight back, I'm still looking in Jasmine's eyes. I'm seeing things as Jasmine, and I'm like, it's uncomfortable. It's weird. It's.
I left my clothes there. I thought we were going to be back in 2 weeks.
We were like,
I didn't even pack up everything. I was like, yeah, this will blow over. It's no point in me packing and going back and packing.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was over yet. It couldn't, because we were so deep in it. And then as the years started to progress and, we started to get a little more, sus, I think that I had to keep referencing back to Jasmine's eye. I had to keep opening up the script and saying, I had this, situation happen to me at the grocery store, and it's weird. I wonder what Jasmine would have thought about that. And I wonder, what does Zoe feel about that? We'll deal with that later, but let's talk about Jasmine. And I think it was just me trying to kind of reference back, as much as I could. And, Jasmine's eyes they were, as the year went on, her eyes got a little bit more distant. But I think that when things in everyday life would happen, it was quick. I knew exactly where to turn. I knew exactly what to read. I knew exactly what memories to go back to. And it was the script. It was master. And I think, Mariama and Regina are completely correct. Like, it's a completely different Jasmine when we get back.
Oh God, yeah.
So I had so much more to bring, so much more life to bring. I was just in a whole new space of, let's get this done. Nothing is going to stop us. Nothing is going to stop us. We're going to get it done. And I hope that, you can see that we all came back ready to work. Really.
The film's obviously, there are scary things, there are surprising things. There is sort of like an extra shocker at the end, and I won't say any more than that. But I'm wondering, with that in mind, how you all think and want audiences to feel at the end, like when they turn off their TV, or eventually when they walk out of the theater. What do you think and hope is the sort of thing that people are left with?
I hope that they leave the same way that I did, which is wanting to ask more questions, wanting to watch it again so they can see the things that might be, in the back, or I don't know. I would want them to just be curious and kind of move from there with whatever is going on in their brain.
Life is complicated no matter where you are. Just knowing that makes the mind go a million different spaces. But, I think everyone has a point of view in the story. There's 3 women in similar circumstances, in completely different, in the same world, but having completely different experiences. And I just think hopefully audiences will have that too. You know what I mean? That, there'll be some small nugget for everyone that's worth discourse, or, worth emotion, or worth, what I mean, something. And so that's what I loved when I read it. Just that idea that it was open for maybe interpretation even, you know what I mean? And this broader sense of understanding that we don't always understand.
I agree with both of them. I think that, I hope that audiences come out of the film arguing with each other about what is what, and I really, really hope that there is, that the film makes space for people to come to quite different conclusions about, the women, about the world, about Ancaster, and about reality. I think that there's a way that we can fool ourselves that we live in a logical world. And I think that there is, for me, a mystery and intrigue and chaos at every turn. And so I'm almost not even interested in trying to make somebody feel a certain way. I'm trying to describe as accurately and sincerely, and honestly as I can, a feeling and a memory and a story that I have. And then, I am excited and scared for them to take that, hear that, and go where they must.